Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
Welcome back, episode 13.
Here we are, good to be here.
Excellent stuff. So we've got James back in the room.
Hi guys, good to be back after the COVID, but thank you for all the lovely feedback that people have been commenting. If I'm all okay, I'm absolutely fine and feeling very much back to myself. So thank you for those kind comments.
Brilliant stuff. So just a reminder, for those of you who aren't so familiar, why are we here? What are we doing? This is essentially a Cornwall Property Podcast. We aim to inform, educate, inspire you guys about property with a particular emphasis on the Cornwall property market. We know there's a Cornwall housing crisis going on. There's not enough properties, enough housing for local people, and we want to try and educate people and encourage people to get involved to help do what they can to make a difference in that crisis. So that's why we're here. But James, how can people get in touch if they want to?
Yeah, that's it. They can go to cornwallpropertypodcast.com, scroll down to the bottom there, and they can put as much information or any questions they want to us, and they can also come to us on social media, whether that be Instagram, Facebook. Just reach out to us in any of those ways and we will do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. Right, so this episode we have got, as always, this is our market update episode where we'll give you some updates on what's going on in the property market nationally, locally, and we've also then got our picks of the week, where I've got a commercial property that is currently empty, which could be a good opportunity for someone to bring some housing back to the market, and James picks his residential property, so we'll go on to those also. But let's get started, James. So the headline story that caught my eye, that I thought was very, very interesting and encouraging as well, really, was from Zoopla. Zoopla have done a study and they've just put an article out there, and the headline is simply, new year demand for property hits record levels, 50%. So it's up 50%. Now that's a 5-year high. So obviously, but people at the end of last year were thinking, "Whoa, like that was a heck of a year. That was a really strong year for property. Surely that can't continue." Well, already there are some fantastic numbers looking at the new year trends in the property market and what's been happening. So some statistics here. So the housing market enjoys the biggest new year bounce in 5 years, with demand soaring by 49%. The interesting thing is that that's across the board. That's on all types of property. So it's not just houses, or it's not just flats. It's a general increase throughout, which is great. And these numbers have come from the house price index as well. So they're solid numbers and reliable numbers, which is great. So the increase in buyers was on par with the record levels of interest seen during the stamp duty. So again, people thought that the stamp duty was the main and only stimulus, but clearly there's more to it than that, because the stamp duty holiday's gone now, and that sort of level of interest is still out there. So really, really encouraging. And obviously this spike has helped increase the average cost of the UK home from £242,000 all the way up to now, the home is now £242,000, £100,000, compared to £216,500. So the average house price has spiked again, and it's all because of this interest, and the demand is still there, obviously. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really surprising that the market is still so buoyant and really, really exciting, despite the stamp duty, as you've rightly said, has come to an end. So I think on that side it's really, really good, but I don't want to be the negative on it. I'm just looking at it from a bigger perspective, that you got, the average house price at 242,000, which is great. House prices are increasing, but is that good for the first time buyer? Because of course we know the ratios with the mortgage. I know always come back to finances, you know what I'm like, Dan, but it is 4.5 or 5 times, your earnings. And although house prices are going up, are wages doing the same? And I don't think they are at the moment. So again, I just worry for that affordability for those first-time buyers who I really like to see, get on the ladder. Investing's great, but we've all got to start somewhere, haven't we? But it is mad what the market's still doing at the moment. I'm surprised.
Yeah, massively. And I know we have a chat, obviously it's our day-to-day, it's our business ourselves, but as you rightly said, with the first-time buyers, it makes it so much harder to get that first step on that ladder. And what we've mentioned in previous podcasts is we're starting to get to kind of, not necessarily London prices, but with the way we're going, the house prices are increasing so much. But the problem is we're not seeing the wages follow suit. So that gap of house price and affordability is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, very valid point there. Very valid point. So we'll see what happens. But obviously we've got interest rates and inflation. These are all going to be things that I know that you're going to touch on a little bit as well. But these all play big factors into all this.
They certainly do.
So a second headline, which is a big one, which is so big that actually we've both picked this headline, but there's so much to unpick within it. That'll be interesting. So a big one this week in the property news and the property world in the UK is the Levelling Up White Paper by Mr. Michael Gove, the man himself. So the 3 points that I would like to pick out, focusing on regulations and things like that, are that the key plans are for landlords. So they're going to be getting rid of the Section 21 no-fault eviction. So Section 21, for those that aren't familiar, are, if I give you a scenario, so James is my tenant, I am the landlord. I want to sell my property, but James is in there currently. I would issue James a Section 21 notice, which is me just saying, look, James, you've done nothing wrong, but I want to sell my property. I need you to move on. That's your eviction notice to tell you that that's happening. So it's a no-fault eviction. So the tenant's done nothing wrong, but the landlord would use a Section 21 to get access to his property again, to get control of his property once more. So the idea is that we're going to get rid of the Section 21 no-fault evictions completely. They're going to abolish it. So the idea is that it's trying to end the unfair situation where renters can be kicked out of their homes for no reason. So I completely appreciate it. I think it's good for the tenant because it gives them extra security. As a landlord, it could be seen as quite worrying because it's like, what if I did want to change tact? What if I did want to sell my property for whatever reason? There might be issues that you're having finance-wise and you need to sell the property. It makes it a little bit more difficult. But there's obviously going to be ways that you can remove your tenants legally as well. So they might put an extra... it'd be interesting to see. That's not really outlined yet, whether or not there's going to be extra clauses in Section 8 or things like that. But yeah, a very, very big one. It has been spoken about for a number of years now, but interesting to see that they're actually going to be doing this now. Another one that really caught my eye was that they're going to be consulting on introducing a landlord register. So the aim is that they're setting out plans to crack down on rogue landlords. So similar to what is already out there called the HMO register, so House of Multiple Occupancy Register. So any property that has 5 or more rooms or tenants living in there from a different family. So student houses, quite typically, you're probably most familiar with people, or you've got professional house shares as well. But HMOs, they've got a housing register, a licensing register, whereby you've got to adhere to a number of regulations to be getting a license. And it's their way of trying to crack down on compliance. So making sure you're fire compliant, there's particular room sizes that you've got to be within and adhere to. But the idea is that they're trying to do this for a landlord register as well, and a private rented sector register. So the idea is that if I stick to just the landlord register, their idea is that they want to get a list of landlords and actually then highlight who the landlords are, so tenants could potentially look up the landlord, making sure that they're on the register and they've got a track record. But the problem that I've got with this is it's not always the good ones that sign up to these things, because there are bound to be extra HMOs out there that aren't licensed. I've witnessed and seen some myself here in Cornwall that are tenanted, but they're not licensed, which is making them illegal. But how do you police this? How do you crack down on it? There's just so much going on there. But it's the good landlords that get licensed and adhere to this, but it's the rogue landlords, which they're trying to hit here and point out and put highlight, I suppose. But it's those that won't be a part of that register, which is the worry. But it's just a case of how are you going to police that? How are you going to police it? There's going to be a lot of manpower required for that. So that's an interesting one for me. But then the last point, so we've got no fault evictions going to be abolished, the introduction of a landlord register, and the final one that I did mention slightly, but the government will announce a plan that for the first time ever, there'll be for all homes in the private rented section, they're going to have a minimum standard requirement. So it might be, they're going to be putting out there basically a checklist that you can only rent your property as long as you adhere to these points, which I think is a brilliant idea, and it should be done because there's so many properties that are out there being rented, really poor standard and unsafe, more importantly. But yeah, those are the 3 points that caught my eye. What are your thoughts to those? Any that stick out and you'd like to comment on at all?
Yeah, just one of the words you just there, just safety. You know, it's horrible in our industry that there are properties out there that really are unsafe and just uninhabitable, I would say, but yet people are still living there. Now, I know that can be attractive, really cheap rent for certain people living in houses, but, people do die in houses at the fault of the landlord. So I think like you say, it's going to be very hard to crack down on everybody, but at least they're trying to do something. I think can only be a good thing for the industry because, as you and I, we were very closely, our beliefs are with quality of living, but I think before that, safety has to come first. And I think this is going in the right direction for the safety side of things, which I'm really pleased to hear. And then on the section 21, I think that's also good in a way. But I do think, like you said, that it's not been written yet, but there needs to be some form of protection for the landlord. I mean, you and I are both landlords and we want to, give good quality living and all that type of stuff. But at the same time, we want the tenants to be able to play the game as well, that things do change for us, mortgage rates, or we're having to sell a property to raise more funding for another development. And just that we've got some, our exits aren't bottlenecks, if you know what I mean, for us as landlords and good quality investors. But yeah, I think it's all moving in the right direction, so I'm quite pleased to see that coming in force.
For sure. And within this white paper, you picked out a few points that caught your eye also.
Yeah, that's it. I didn't want to sort of, bring too much, but obviously this government levelling up plan is quite a big issue. There's 10 points on it, and housing was quite high on the agenda. So just going back to it, so people know that the government has announced that it will soon publish its levelling up white paper, the broad aim of which is to, over a decade, address and fix the geographical inequality in opportunity and wealth that the UK suffers from. So essentially, they're trying to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor and, give more opportunities to people that aren't in such a fortunate position to get those springboards to make something of themselves and earn some decent wages. Why should they suffer depending where they live geographically in the country? Are totally all for that. So how does this relate to finance then? Well, we've got among these missions that one directly relevant to the mortgage industry is point 10, which stipulates that by 2030, renters will have a secure path to ownership, with the number of first-time buyers increasing in all areas. And the government's ambition is for the number of non-decent rented homes to have fallen by 50%. I think that ties into, non-decent homes. That's going to be similar.
Compliance, register side of
compliance,
things, yeah.
Exactly what you were saying, Dan, with the health and safety side of things, with the biggest improvements in the lowest performing areas as well, all over the country. So I think this is a good thing, and like I say, I'm all for bridging the gap between the poor and the wealthy. And the third point on this, it says the government's levelling up plan goes on to say it's trying to bridge the gap between the poor and wealthy for a healthier society. So my question is that, could we be seeing some form of wider variety of, 5% mortgages or even 0% deposit schemes for people to get on the ladder? We've already discussed earlier on about, the first time buyers. We want to protect them. Everybody deserves, I think, to get on the ladder at some point. But it is just so hard today to be able to, firstly, meet the housing prices, which are going up to 242,000 average house price, but where do they get that deposit from? Most people, I think, correct me if I'm wrong there, but if you're taking home after all bills, everything's paid more than £500 in most household settings. If you're on sort of standard or minimum wage, you're doing quite well. But if you need a deposit plus stamp duty, you're looking at least sort of 30 grand. Who's got that? So I think if they're going to want to bridge this gap for the first time buyers, they are going to have to introduce 5% deposits, or will the government give some form of scheme to help? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, it comes back to it with the prices. The house prices are going up, as we stated already, and again, it's just that entry level, how they're going to do it. And there's some great suggestions in terms of ideas what they want to do. It's very vague in quite a lot of places still, so it'll be interesting to see what the detail will be in time. I think there's a lot more. There's some great ideas, but again, they need to assist it. There's 5% wider mortgages, yeah, brilliant. Zero deposit schemes, great, but it's making sure that these are accessible for everybody that needs it. I think that's going to be the big one. But some very valuable points there.
Absolutely. Definitely. And that sort of brings me on to my second headline as well, with affordability, and no surprise, or is it a surprise, in the last week yet again the Bank of England raises the base rate by another 0.25%. Well, I don't think we expected to see it that quick, but so just so you're aware, it was at 0.25 and now is at 0.5%, so it has it's gone up by a fair bit in a short period of time, because the last increase was only in the last 3 months, which is crazy, don't you think, Dan? Already we've got a raise. Yes,
good. We weren't surprised about the first raise, but I think it does become a bit more of a surprise when it's doubled essentially.
That's a big
so
number,
quickly.
doubled. They might just do it slowly or gradually, but that is the fact we've got here. The Bank of England said this latest move was to help push inflation back down to its 2% target. In the MPC minutes, the bank noted inflation is expected to increase further in coming months, to close to 6% in February and March before peaking at around 7.25% in April. This projected peak is around 2% points higher than the expected November report, which, I think it's quite worrying times for interest rates because again, it's that affordability things. Even if they do bring in some schemes where they can help first-time buyers, how are they going to be able to service these mortgage rates if the lenders follow suit on it? And this brings me on to another point. This latest move is expected to drive mortgage rates upwards, putting financial pressure on households who are being hit with higher fuel and food bills. I mean, don't even get me started on energy bills that we're seeing, up to 100% increase in 2022 from where it was, last year. I mean, how are people going to afford this? I mean, what's your thoughts on it, Dan? Because I've got to be honest, I'm worried.
Massively, and I think the biggest worry would be if I was on a variable mortgage. So with these interest rates changing like it's going to be, obviously the cost per month, they're still fluctuating. I like to know what I'm paying every single month.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
You can then budget. That's how I like it, which is why I always would opt for a fixed term mortgage, which again, when you've got the fluctuation on energy bills going up, like literally, well, it's not no downing at all, but continue to go up. It's how do you budget for that and make those differences? As you say, if it's those who are fortunate enough and they're doing well enough to have a pot of money at the end of the month that they can use and dip into, but very, very quickly that pot is going to be dwindling down as the energy bills go up, as if you're on a variable mortgage.
Tracker rate.
Yeah,
probably
it's
not going to be too much fun. So, it looked like a good idea a little while ago, but
exactly. Again, just state we're obviously not financial advisors. We're not mortgage advisors. We're just sharing what our thoughts are. So if this is something of a concern to you, please reach out to your mortgage broker. If you're on a tracker or a variable mortgage, have a little chat to your broker, see what they can sort. If they can get you onto a fixed term soon, then that'll give you hopefully a bit of peace of mind, know what you're going to be paying for how long you're going to be paying that, especially with energy prices moving so fluidly at the minute. It's worrying times for people, and it's understandably so. I think the best thing you can do personally, what I would be doing, is trying to just fix my prices as soon as possibly can, because I know where I am then each month, and I can then budget far easily.
Absolutely. And Dan and James, we're not Mr. Gloom. There is hope and light at the end of the tunnel, and I'll finish on this one. It is also said in the report by the mortgage strategy.co.uk that industry experts point out that the mortgage market remains really competitive with a number of attractive deals still on the market. It is not expected to dampen demand for mortgage products, particularly in the short term. Rates will remain competitive due to the amount of competing lenders out there, and I think that's really good. That's a nice one to end on. That although the base rate has gone up, that doesn't automatically mean, guys, that all the lenders are going to put their rates up, because there are literally thousands and thousands of mortgage products out there from the lenders. So it's in their interest, because there's so much competition at the moment. They will keep the rates, and you might not see any jumps. And I know on the last base rate with the Bank of England increase, there wasn't that many lenders that were putting their rates up either. So they know that with the amount of competition out there, that they've got to be careful as well. So I don't think you're going to see crazy mortgage prices go north anytime soon, but that's just my view on it.
No, definitely. And even more reason, while it is so competitive, is to perhaps tap in and try and get yourself a fixed rate.
Yeah, definitely, for as long as possible, like you say. But yeah, that's it from me on all the financial stuff this week.
Fantastic. Which brings us on to the final part of the show, which will do our property picks of the week. So as mentioned, I will be picking a commercial property, and the property that I have picked is a commercial building in Truro city centre. It's actually an old shop. It's got 3 stories, so you've got a shop front on the ground floor. It looks to be that you've actually got a separate entrance which could get you upstairs to like the masonette sort of entrance, so it's already split. It appears to be all on one title, but this is again further due diligence that I'd recommend you doing if this is of interest. But as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, as I say, you can flick through you can watch obviously me in real time, or if you're listening on your podcast, there is a link in the show notes where you can access obviously all of the news articles that we've referenced today, but also the property links here on Rightmove. So this is 8 River Street in Truro. Guide price of £270,000. So it's for sale. It is a Grade 2 listed building, which obviously comes with its own, not necessarily issues, but own hurdles to just jump through. So not only have you got to get planning, you've got to get listed building consent as well. So the view that I have for this is potentially just revamping the office space. It might be that you could put shop front in there, but there's a lot of unused space above on these 2 floors. So straight away I'm thinking, right, could we make this into an apartment? 1, potentially 2 apartments, obviously subject to the size and making sure you're meeting minimum standard requirements. But this is one that catch my eye. It's an opportunity. It's a vacant place at the minute. It's something we could bring to the market. As I say, you'd recommend getting a historian in terms of a listed building specialist in there to have a little look and help guide you, because with any plan application, you're going to need to get yourself a historical survey and statement, historic building survey and statement to back up your application and to support your application. But there's just sadly so many of these types of properties in Truro city centre on its, let alone everywhere else in the towns in the county. So yeah, it's an interesting one, an opportunity there. It's not going to be easy, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity to bring some commercial property over to the residential. And again, you might even want to title split it if it's all on one title. Title split it, chop the shop up on its own title, make the apartments onto a separate title, and then you might be able to get someone in for a lease on the bottom floor, or sell 1 or 2 of either or potentially. But it might be another strategy someone could look into. But again, what are your thoughts on that one, James?
Yeah, I think it's a nice opportunity there. I wouldn't be, to listeners, wouldn't be too worried about it being Grade 2 listed. It's just the case of getting the right people behind you, right planning consultant and heritage and conservation advisor, and just outsource and get the right info that you can. But the point that you made, Dan, that there is plenty of space. The ground floor being, potential for a shop doesn't worry me as opposed to it was already a restaurant where you might not be able to get mortgages, on the with the top being apartments. So that ticks a box, and you got plenty of space there, and I think we can get some more units, which is what we're trying to do here, create more homes for people in Cornwall. So I think it's a good one, definitely.
It's a great location as well. It really is. It's on one of the main streets, right in the centre of town. So it's going to be a popular location. And what I do love is the fact that it's already got separate entrance to accommodate upstairs as a separate masonette.
Mix it up quite a bit there, I think.
Should be a good one. Which brings us on to your property, James. What have we got for us?
That's it. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm not giving you a property in Camborne this week. I found it is an auction property, so the guide price is always going to be quite attractive here at $125,000. But lovely property. I've got here a 2-bed end of terrace in Falmouth, and it's one of those properties that is definitely going to be needing a full renovation. As for the viewers, you can see from the pictures here, it's top to bottom. But what's very good and quite rare for Falmouth is that it's also got like a little terrace garden as well, but that could easily be made into parking, which, personal point of view, I think is more valuable than the garden actually in Falmouth, because it's just not easy, is it, Dan, to get parking in that area. But this is a top to bottom refurb. I think it would make an excellent buy to let, and also would make an affordable first time buyer property as well. So I think the auction on this is at the end of February, so if you fancy going along to that or watching it online, because they do online versions of this particular auction, I think you could make some serious money here, and of course bring a home back to the market. I did actually make a quick call to the agents on this particular property, and it's been unencumbered now for 2 years.
Wow.
So there we go, just another derelict property, unencumbered, that's just been sat there whilst Cornwall is crying out for places for people to live. So great opportunity there, I think.
Brilliant. It's a guide price 125 to 135,000, and it's on auction on the 17th of February 2022. So interesting. And again, there's such a space out the back where you could split that courtyard into parking and a little private garden area. So obviously a lot of opportunities, and definitely get your creative juices flowing, I suppose. But
I'd also just like to say to our listeners and viewers, even if you're looking to get into property and you're just trying to do a bit more homework, educate yourself, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't get yourself down to that auction and just be a spectator. You don't have to pay to be at the auction.
Log in. Don't even need to go
or
there.
Log in online. I quite like going to them physiologically, just because you get the real energy there and you can kind of feel the tension in the rooms. But sometimes you get these auctions that are really, really empty. No one's there, but yet the property's being listed and you're not up against too much competition. But it's really good at atmosphere to go to an auction. So do get to one if you get the chance.
So those interested, this one is marketed by Auction House covering Devon and Cornwall. Give them a shout. Again, the links to this property are on the show notes. Fantastic. Well, that brings us to a close on this episode today. Thank you so much for joining us once again and for your comments that you've said previously. Again, James is going to give you a little update on how you can get in touch. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, that's it. So you can get us on the cornwallpropertypodcast.com. You can get in touch with us by sending us an email, hello@cornwallpropertypodcast.com. And as always, go to the social media and reach out to us. We are dying to hear all your property questions and interests. We love it.
Yeah, and just to jump in there as well, we did mention, obviously, don't be afraid of listed buildings. If you need contacts or would like any referrals, obviously we have a power team that we use and can highly recommend people within that. So if there's certain experts that you need and would like to speak to locally, by all means get in touch with us and we'll happily try and help you by directing you to the right people who we trust and have used ourselves. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me as well, and look forward to catching up with you guys next time. Take care.